This is Sam, and in this video we're looking at the coup in Chile in 1973. So first of all, let's look at the background to the Chilean coup, as one of Washington's key concerns was to keep the regimes in the Caribbean and Latin America anti-communist. And this was especially paramount because this region was the USA's own backyard. In Chile, the Americans had a particular interest though, as Chile had had a long history of stability and democracy, and the US had extensive interests in the copper and silver mines. However, there was always a fear that the Chileans would succumb to communism. So this meant that in the 1964 Chilean election, the CIA spent millions of dollars shoring up the campaign of the Christian Democrat Eduardo Frei Montalva, whilst also scaring voters away from his socialist rival Salvador Allende. Now, Allende lost the 1964 election, yet he stood again in September 1970. And in the first round, he was able to top polls, and this severely worried the Americans. So this meant that the CIA started to undermine Allende's chances, and the attempt to persuade the Chilean government to opt for the conservative candidate. However, the coup failed, and Allende was elected as the Chilean president. But once in office, Allende started to implement socialist reforms as millions of hectares were seized and redistributed as farm cooperatives. The copper mines and banking systems were also nationalized, and Allende forged links with Castro. So this meant that Nixon and Kissinger aimed to make the Chilean economy scream. So this meant that the US influenced the World Bank into not lending the Chileans money, and they withdrew their own aid. This forced Chile to look for alternative support, which would come in the form of Castro and the Soviet Union. However, the Soviet Union were unwilling to antagonize the US at the time of détente, and they only offered limited loans. So this resulted in spiraling inflation, which was 140% in 1972, declining industry, farming stagnation, and rising unemployment. In July 1973, workers in the copper mines also went on strike, and many of these strikes were instigated by the CIA. So due to the mounting tensions within the country, the commander-in-chief of the army, which was Carlos Prats Gonzalez, resigned on the 22nd of August 1973, and he was replaced by General Augusto Pinochet. And this was a man who Allende had mistakenly believed that he could trust. But a month later, Pinochet started a military coup against the Allende government. Now this was well organised, and the armed forces were in control of the majority of the country. This meant that President Allende retreated to the presidential palace and stated that he would rather die than agree to surrender. The result of the coup was the death of Allende and the overthrow of his socialist regime. So after the overthrow of the Allende government, the military junta acted quickly in order to suspend the constitution, impose strict censorship, declare a curfew, halt political activities, and dissolve Congress. So this meant that after 50 years of democratic government in Chile, it was now in the hands of a military dictatorship. This dictatorship started to round up and eliminate its opposition, and over the next 10 years, tens of thousands of Allende supporters were tortured. Pinochet also reversed the economic policies of Allende, so factories, land and banks were transformed into a liberal free market economy on an American model. Now, whilst there was no evidence that the US were complicit in the 1973 coup, they had not given the impression that they were against it, and the CIA supported Pinochet's military junta afterwards. So this meant that the US could not claim the moral upper hand in the Cold War. So thank you for watching this video, and see you soon. Bye.